Hello, this is Claudia, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the July 8th issue of the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Democrats clash over who replaces Plattner even before he exits. Progressives and moderates are gearing up for a fight over an as-yet undecided process in Maine to name a Senate nominee to replace Graham Plattner after a rape accusation. He still wants a say, too. The implosion of Graham Plattner's campaign for Senate in Maine after an accusation of rape has ripped open divisions inside the Democratic Party, as its progressives and moderates battle to pick his successor even before he has said he will step aside. National Democrats have grown alarmed that a seat seen as crucial to winning control of the Senate could be slipping from the party's grasp. Mr. Plattner had survived a series of controversies about a tattoo with Nazi symbolism, inflammatory old Reddit posts, and his relationships with women. But many in the party abandoned him after the rape accusation, including the leaders of the Maine Democratic Party and Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the minority leader. They have demanded that Mr. Plattner step down before a July 13th deadline for him to be replaced on the ballot to find a new Democrat to run against Senator Susan Collins, a longtime Republican fixture in the state. The Maine Super PAC for Democratic Senate candidates said it would redirect $24 million in ad reservations to other states if he remained. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, one of Mr. Plattner's earliest and most prominent backers, joined the chorus on Tuesday afternoon. I have spoken with Graham Plattner about the best path forward for Maine, Mr. Sanders said in a statement. In light of these very, very serious allegations, I have recommended that he step aside. Mr. Plattner, who has denied the allegations, said on a private call with his campaign staff on Monday evening that he believed he still had leverage to influence which candidate would replace him on the ticket, according to 3 people familiar with the conversation. On the call, he did not announce plans to withdraw, but implied such a decision would be coming, the people said. Late on Tuesday, the executive director of the Maine Democratic Party released a blunt video accusing Mr. Plattner's team of trying to meddle in the process of picking his replacement. We have repeatedly reiterated to Graham Plattner's team that they have no role in determining our U.S. Senate nominee, nor in determining what this process looks like, Devin Murphy Anderson, the party's executive director, said in the video, which was posted on social media. Mr. Plattner's campaign responded that it had not tried to put its finger on the scale. Top Democrats believe that it is only a matter of time before Mr. Plattner formally quits and gives the party a fresh start in its bid to oust Ms. Collins, who has proved a durable foe. Mr. Plattner's campaign had stopped running ads on Meta's platforms, such as Facebook and Instagram, as of Tuesday, according to the company's ad disclosure database. He had been running multiple ads as recently as Monday evening. The drama comes almost exactly 2 years after the Democratic Party was roiled by the exit of Joseph R. Biden Jr., then president, from his re-election race, and the speedy anointment of Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee. That process and Democrats' ultimate loss in 2024 has left deep scar tissue for many in the party. Many on the left, including, it appears, Mr. Plattner himself, want any replacement to come from the progressive wing of the party after he won the primary over Governor Janet Mills, a moderate 2-term Democrat who withdrew over a month before the election. To the Democratic establishment, this is not your opening, said Joseph Girvagossi, the executive director of Our Revolution, a group that emerged from Mr. Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. Referring to Senate Democrats' campaign arm, he added, Mainers did not vote by an overwhelming margin against Janet Mills and the DSCC's hand-picked pick, just to be handed another status quo candidate anyway. On the flip side, many in the party establishment believe those on the left should show some humility after Mr. Plattner's collapse. A range of Democratic groups and activists engaged in the politics of I told you so. When women raise the alarm, listen, said a social media post from Emily's List, a group that works to elect Democratic women and that had backed Ms. Mills. Graham Plattner's behavior is disqualifying, as we have said this whole damn time, and he should end his campaign. On Tuesday morning, more Democrats who are ideological allies of Mr. Plattner called for him to step aside, including Mayor Zoran Mamdani of New York City. I believe that it's time for him to drop out of the race, Mr. Mamdani said when asked at a news conference. I think the focus of today should be to respond to the gravity of what so many of us have read, and I think the only appropriate response is for the campaign to come to an end. Mr. Mamdani and Mr. Plattner share several advisors, including Morris Katz and Rebecca Katz of the Fight Agency. The progressive group Move On also dropped its endorsement. As the situation in Maine threatened to spiral out of control, Mr. Schumer said, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee are set to host major donors this week for a fundraising retreat at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. Donors are asked to contribute $44,300 to attend, according to a copy of the invitation. The event, which was previously scheduled, was billed as a special weekend to discuss the DSCC strategy and campaigns for taking back the Democratic Senate majority, but now talk is likely to be consumed by the developments in Maine. The calls for Mr. Plattner's exit came from every corner of the party by Tuesday. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York, and the minority leader said as part of a wide-ranging interview with the New York Times that Graham Plattner should end his senatorial campaign immediately. He added, and as many of his prior supporters have suggested, deal with these very serious allegations outside of being a candidate. Mr. Plattner can be replaced as the Democratic nominee if he withdraws voluntarily by July 13th. The state Democratic Party would then have until July 27th to pick his replacement under state law. But the law doesn't dictate how the state party itself needs to pick Mr. Plattner's replacement. What would look like remains unclear. The options under discussion include a convention or a statewide caucus in late July. We ask for your patience as this work continues, Devin Murphy Anderson, the state party's executive director, wrote in a message to committee members on Tuesday, adding, whatever process is ultimately adopted must reflect our democratic values. It should be open, inclusive, transparent, and fair. A range of candidates are being discussed with some early attention on those who ran and lost the primary for governor this year. Those Democrats include Troy Jackson, a former president of the Maine Senate, Nirav Shah, a former director of Maine's Public Health Agency, and Sheena Bellows, Maine Secretary of State. But some Democrats were concerned about elevating someone who just lost. Who might replace Graham Plattner? Here are some of the figures, both likely and far more speculative, who could seek to run in Mr. Plattner's place. Maine politicians: Troy Jackson, former president of Maine Senate; Nirav Shah, former director of Maine's Public Health Agency; Sheena Bellows, Maine Secretary of State; Jordan Wood, former Senate candidate; Jared Golden, United States Representative; Valley Geiger, Maine State Representative. Political outsiders: Dan Klebin, owner of a brewery; Patrick Dempsey, actor; Heather Cox Richardson, historian. Supporters of Mr. Jackson, who had backed Mr. Plattner in the primary, created a Draft Troy website, and he filed paperwork with the Federal Election Commission for a Senate Exploratory Committee. Mr. Shah put out a statement that said he had received hundreds of encouraging messages, adding that anyone who ran for the nomination should commit to a televised debate in multiple town halls across every corner of the state. Ms. Bellows said in a statement on Tuesday that she was seriously considering entering the race and was uniquely fit to unite Mainers and defeat Susan Collins in just over 100 days. Valley Geiger, a state representative, is also being discussed. Ms. Geiger was an early Plattner backer who wrote an opinion essay last fall titled "Graham Plattner Deserves Grace." Another possible candidate is Dan Klebin, a co-founder of the Maine Beer Company, a brewery outside Portland. He briefly ran for Senate last year before dropping out and endorsing Miss Mills. But like Mr. Plattner, he has never had elected office or been through the rigors of a campaign. Yet another possibility is Jordan Wood, who also previously ran for Senate and dropped out. Mr. Wood ran instead in the primary for Representative Jared Golden's House seat and lost. Mr. Golden, a moderate Democrat and veteran who holds the most pro-Trump House seat of any Democrat in Congress, is retiring and previously said he was ready to step away from elected office. In recent days, Mr. Golden has fielded calls gauging his interest in a run for Senate, according to two people familiar with those conversations who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private discussions. But on Tuesday night, a spokesman, Mario Moretto, said that if Congressman Golden wanted the nomination, he would have put his name forward many months ago. More unconventional picks were being bandied about as well. One Democratic firm in recent days included the actor Patrick Dempsey in a poll. He was viewed favorably by 52% of voters in the survey. Others floated the popular liberal historian Heather Cox Richardson, who was based in Maine. Some Democrats erupted after the news emerged that Mr. Plattner wanted a replacement who was aligned with him politically. One person familiar with the Plattner campaign's internal discussions said on Monday that Mr. Plattner would seek a guarantee he would be replaced by someone in agreement with the values and vision and policy agenda that he had pressed. Others argue that under the circumstances, Mr. Plattner's support would be damaging. Joe Baldacci, a state senator who ran and lost in the primary for Mr. Golden's House seat this year, said the idea that Mr. Plattner would bless a replacement would be the equivalent of tying a lead weight to the person. After you have put the Democratic Party in a shambles and undermined all Democratic candidates running for office in Maine, then you should have no say in who will be your successor, Mr. Baldacci wrote on social media. He added any connections to Plattner will doom that person's campaign from the very beginning. Drama and spectacle as Trump makes his NATO entrance. The second President Trump landed in Turkey, the center of gravity shifted right to where he likes it best, himself. When President Trump stepped off his plane in Ankara on Tuesday afternoon, he received an over-the-top welcome comparable only to the one the Pope got when he visited Turkey late last year. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was there on the tarmac to greet him. The Turkish autocrat did this for none of the other more than 30 world leaders who arrived in Ankara for a NATO summit, accompanied by dozens of Turks on horseback. A band played the Star-Spangled Banner as cannons fired and fighters' jets flew low overhead, trailing streaks of red, white, and blue smoke. The second Mr. Trump landed on his Qatari-gifted jumbo jet, the center of gravity at the summit shifted right to where Mr. Trump likes it best, himself. He takes all the oxygen out of the room for everybody else, Senator Mike Rounds, Republican of South Dakota, said Tuesday at a reception on the sidelines of the summit in the Turkish capital. He added he's bigger than life here. As usual, Mr. Trump's idiosyncratic style of governing had ensured a spectacle on the world stage. Indeed, even before he arrived, he was creating big drama between himself and many of the people he would be coming face-to-face with here this week. Last month, he said he would deign to take the 10-hour flight only because the summit was being hosted by his good friend, Mr. Erdogan. At last week, he called the head of FIFA to ask him to review the red card given to the United States top goal scorer in the World Cup. The player was later reinstated for the game against Belgium, setting off fury in Brussels, the de facto capital of the European Union where NATO is headquartered. Perhaps the most personal drama gripping NATO this week is Mr. Trump's scrap with Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, who until very recently among the most Trump-allied leaders in Europe. The president has been picking on her over her refusal to allow her country to be drawn into the war against Iran. Mr. Trump has been all over the front pages of the Italian papers for weeks. Trump è un coglione, screamed the front page of the right-leaning newspaper Libero, using an Italian term of art that has many colorful translations, all of them vulgar. But the feud really crescendoed this week when Mr. Trump posted a doctored picture of Miss Meloni staring at him longingly with the caption, "Restraining order needed." It has all contributed to a carnivalesque quality of this year's NATO. After Mr. Trump arrived, he sat beside Mr. Erdogan at a bilateral meeting in the Turkish presidential complex and promptly stirred up some fresh drama. He criticized Denmark and reminded NATO leaders that he still had designs on Greenland, complained that Britain, France, and Italy did not do enough to support the United States in its war against Iran, said Europe was a lot better 20 years ago, and mused on Miss Meloni, characterizing his quarrel that has caused so much international agita as something verging on playful. "I think she's a nice person," he said breezily. "I didn't put a heavy press on her." Mr. Trump's conduct has been awkward for his supporters in Ankara, who say they're happy with the results he gets, even if they can't always abide the way he goes about getting them. "I think there's a lot of ways of communicating back and forth," Mr. Rounds said, when asked what he thought of the president's restraining order post about the Italian prime minister. "I don't know what happened. I don't know what was there, so I don't comment on everything he says, but I do look at his actions." Mr. Rounds credited the president's style for its results. NATO countries are coughing up more for defense spending. The Republican senator was standing in the middle of a tented party Tuesday evening thrown by the Atlantic Council, a pro-NATO think tank, at the Ankara Palace, a former state guest house converted into a presidential museum by Mr. Erdogan. It was a stuffy affair. Like so many of the parties thrown here this week, there was no alcohol since it's prohibited from being served at government buildings under Mr. Erdogan's conservative Muslim administration. Arms salesmen, American embassy staff, European diplomats, and Turkish bureaucrats crowded around him to bat around the finer points of transatlanticism. As ever, Mr. Trump was the elephant in the tent. We know that the road to the summit has not been without its difficulty, Jenna Ben Yehuda, an Atlantic Council executive, said in a speech to those in attendance. She talked about honest and tough conversations between allies. Senator Jeanne Shaheen, Democrat of New Hampshire, said she saw it in her mission in Turkey this week to remind European allies that no matter what drama the American president may be fomenting, Congress supports NATO. It was not a not-so-subtle reminder that even as Mr. Trump threatens withdrawing from the alliance, he cannot do so without congressional approval. On this, the 250th anniversary of the United States, there was a reason. While the colonists wrote the Constitution the way they did because they didn't want a king, said Mrs. Shaheen, who was retiring after 3 terms in the Senate, they wanted to have a government that was governed by the people. That's what we're here to remind people of. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Iran Live updates. Trump cast doubt on future of ceasefire after latest strikes. I think it's over, President Trump said, referring to the preliminary truce, and threatened to strike Iran again. The two sides traded attacks on their truce appeared to edge closer to collapse. Here's the latest. The U.S.-Iran truce that has been on shaky ground for weeks appeared to edge closer to collapse on Wednesday after the two sides traded new attacks, and President Trump said he considered the deal to be over. Speaking at the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, Mr. Trump struck a belligerent tone amid the seemingly unyielding cycle of attacks and counterattacks, threatening to hit Iran again hard and floating the possibility of reinstating the U.S. Navy's blockade on Iranian ports. It's remarkable to hear President Trump threaten to launch massive attacks against Iran while he's in the region. Turkey and Iran share a lengthy border, and Ankara is roughly 1,000 miles from Tehran. Trump's comments today are a striking reversal from how he has described the new Iranian leaders that took over after the supreme leader was killed. He had previously said they were more rational. President Trump said Iran has asked for a timeout during the days-long funeral proceedings for the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which ended tomorrow, adding that he had agreed that the United States would not kill Iranians in the country. While it was mourning, Trump had repeatedly made this point at the summit. He then paused to marvel that he was even talking about such matters. Did you ever think I'd be doing this for a living? President Trump also said that the United States may reinstate its naval blockade near the Strait of Hormuz. He acknowledged that Iran would likely retaliate and claims it would try to put mines in the strait. As President Trump publicly weighs more attacks on Iran, he said he is once again considering taking Karg Island, the hub of the country's oil industry. The president also threatened to attack the country's infrastructure and desalination plants, which experts have previously said could constitute a war crime. I'll give them a little warning. We're going to hit them hard tonight, but we'll see how it all works out, President Trump said at the NATO summit, referring to Iran. Seated next to President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine, President Trump reiterated his claim that the war effort in Iran accomplished regime change. Iran's clerical and military establishment remain in control of Iran, and its most hardline factions may even have emerged strengthened. President Trump is speaking at the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey. He said the United States is probably going to hit Iran hard tonight. Iran targets sites in Bahrain and Kuwait. Iran fired a barrage of missiles and drones against the Persian Gulf overnight on Wednesday in retaliation for the latest wave of American attacks in a seemingly unyielding cycle of attacks and counterattacks between the two countries. Iran's armed forces said they were targeting U.S. military installations in Bahrain and Kuwait, setting off air raid sirens in both countries. The U.S. Military Central Command, which oversees Middle East operations, did not immediately comment. Qatar's Council of Ministers demand that the Iran halt what is called dangerous practices in the Strait of Hormuz a day after one of its liquefied natural gas carriers was targeted in waters off the Omani coast. The state of Qatar retains its full rights to take whatever measures it deems appropriate in response to the attack, the cabinet said in a statement published on state media. Qatar has been mediating in talks between the United States and Iran. After a volatile 24 hours in the Persian Gulf, the head of the International Maritime Organization on Wednesday urged ship operators to avoid sending their ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Doing so would expose the nearly 6,000 seafarers stranded in the Persian Gulf to unnecessary danger, said Arsenio Dominguez, Secretary General of the organization. Attacks on 3 commercial vessels, including a Saudi tanker and Qatari liquefied natural gas carrier, in the waters around the strait are threatening a tentative recovery in shipping. Part of Florida's Stop Woke law ruled illegal by appeals court. The law limits teaching on race, gender, and other topics. Part of the law related to colleges was struck down. It remains in effect in K through 12 schools. An appellate court on Tuesday struck down parts of a Florida law that restrict the teaching of ideas related to race, sexism, and unconscious bias in college classrooms. The higher education provisions of the law, the Stop Woke Act, which Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican, signed into law in 2022, had already been blocked that same year by a lower court judge. That judge had said that the law amounted to viewpoint discrimination and violated the First Amendment. On Tuesday, a U.S. appellate court agreed in 2-1 decision criticizing the state's assertion that it can control the speech of a professor whose salary it pays. The law runs headlong into the Supreme Court's endorsements of academic freedom, wrote the 2 judges from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th District. Florida's salary for speech rule is a breathtaking assertion of power to ban unpopular ideas from public discourse in the very places the state's own statutes recognize as centers of inquiry classrooms, where students are trusted to puzzle through ideas that are good and bad, easy and hard, ideally getting even closer to the truth, the decision said. The Act includes a similar provision for K through 12 education that restricts how concepts related to sexism and racism can be taught. That remains in place. The DeSantis administration did not immediately respond to a message seeking comment. Several states, including Oklahoma, have also passed laws aimed at curbing the teaching of divisive concepts. The American Civil Liberties Union, which filed the court case in Florida, is also challenging the Oklahoma law, among others. This ruling sets a strong precedent that higher education cannot be limited to the whims of politicians, Leah Watson, a senior staff attorney with the ACLU, said in a statement. The Florida ruling does not directly affect legal challenges in other states with similar laws, but it signals that the First Amendment still protects against blatant ideological censorship of teaching at public universities, said Jonathan Friedman with PEN America, a free expression group. Recognizing the laws like Stop Woke were on shaky constitutional grounds, some conservatives in recent years have advocated different approaches to asserting control over curriculum they don't favor. Those methods, including restricting general education courses at universities so they are less accessible and eliminating classes altogether. Mr. Friedman said those who want to censor speech in college classrooms have moved away from explicit prohibitions in favor of dismantling tenure, shared governance, accreditation, and institutional autonomy. The Stop Woke Act prohibits instructors from promoting, among other things, the idea that a person's skin color determines whether they are an oppressor or oppressed, or that virtues such as merit, hard work, and color blindness are racist or sexist. The court on Tuesday said that Florida was seeking to strip professors and students of the ability to fully engage with ideas that are, for better or worse, very popular in some academic circles. Hearing an idea you disagree with is not discrimination, the ruling stated. It is an opportunity to come up with a better idea or maybe even change your mind. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. ICE officer kills a Mexican man in Houston. The agency said the man was an illegal alien who had tried to run over the agent, though no evidence was immediately offered. A federal agent shot and killed a man from Mexico during a traffic stop in Houston on Tuesday morning, the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement said in a statement. The director said that the man had tried to run down the officer who opened fire, though no evidence was immediately provided to support that account. ICE agents stopped a vehicle around 6:50 a.m. and tried to arrest the driver, Lorenzo Salgado, Araujo, according to David Venturella, the agency's acting director. Mr. Venturella described Mr. Araujo as an illegal alien, but did not say why he was being sought. His statement said that the driver had weaponized his vehicle and tried to run over the agent who fired at him. Rustin Rawlings, a spokesman for the Houston Fire Department, said that Mr. Araujo was shot in his abdomen. Mr. Araujo was taken to a hospital and died. The Department of Homeland Security Inspector General's office is leading an investigation into the agent-involved shooting. The FBI's Houston office will focus its investigation into an alleged assault on a federal law enforcement officer. Several federal law enforcement accounts of shootings by immigration agents this year have since been contradicted by video evidence. They include 2 fatal shootings in Minneapolis during a crackdown in January, and another in which video undermined the account of an ICE agent, resulting in dropped charges against the man who was shot. Reached by phone on Tuesday night, Mr. Araujo's son, Ronaldo Zagallo, said his father was a very hardworking man who was trying to obtain his work permit, the right way to provide for his family. He wrote in a Facebook post that his father had been working in construction to provide for himself, his 2 brothers, and his mother. My father did not deserve this, he wrote. Mr. Zagallo said the family planned to say more on Wednesday morning at a news conference. Mr. Araujo had been in the country for 35 years and was a father of 3, according to Juan Perano, chief executive of the League of United Latin American Citizens, an organization that has been in touch with the Araujo family. Mr. Araujo was on his way to a construction site with 3 workers, including a brother, when he encountered the federal agents, Mr. Perano said. The federal government did not respond to a request for comment on the additional passengers. The shooting in Houston is part of a growing number of altercations between people in cars and federal agents involved in the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. About 20 people have been shot in their cars, some of them fatally. In most cases, federal officials have said that the actions were justified because the vehicles had been weaponized and the agents' lives were in danger. Mr. Perano said his organization is calling for an independent investigation into the shooting by the local authorities. He called the government's account a template. We don't trust ICE and we don't trust the FBI to be responsible enough or open or transparent enough with what had happened today, he said. A vigil to remember Mr. Zagallo is planned for Wednesday night. On Tuesday night, a small group of about 30 people gathered near the scene to protest the shooting. Some of them chanted, "No fear, no hate, no ICE in our state." Johnny Torres, age 59, a local resident who joined the impromptu gathering, said the incident had spread fear in the immigrant enclave. "It can be anybody, it could be any one of us," Ms. Torres says. "It's the truth." Businesses fear politicalization as Trump gains more power over U.S. agencies. A Supreme Court ruling that presidents can fire independent regulators without cause has added volatility for industries that prefer stable enforcement. Companies are bracing for the fallout of a decision by the Supreme Court last week that allows the president to fire members of federal regulatory boards for any reason, stripping those regulators of their independence. From the White House, the decision has implications for more than a dozen agencies that oversee power companies, railways, investment banks, labor disputes, and the biggest technology companies. Now corporate executives and lawyers are grappling with the potential for these agencies, which set the rules and enforce them, to become even more political. The decision enables a lot more mischief, said Douglas Melamed, a former general counsel at the chip maker Intel and a former senior official at the Justice Department. The president is totally free to micromanage things and really squeeze these agencies. The ruling adds to the unpredictability of doing business in the United States, where regulation has heavily depended on which party is in power. Republicans tended to loosen the rules, while Democrats tended to add restrictions. Under the Biden administration, for example, regulators limited drilling on public lands, banned non-complete agreements, and sued Adobe and Live Nation, arguing that the companies broke antitrust and consumer protection laws. After President Trump took office a second time, his appointees quickly reversed or abandoned those decisions and settled those lawsuits. These policy swings tended to be moderated by the federal agencies, which have long held bipartisan leadership, and federal law forbade the president to fire the regulators without cause. Now more volatile policymaking could lie ahead as a result of the court decision. Former corporate executives, former regulators, and legal experts warned. Many companies plan for expansions and investments years in advance, and regulatory Uncertainty often stifles growth. Stability is the most important thing, said Samuel J. Palmisano, a former chief executive IBM and now a board member of a venture fund, America's Frontier Fund. The decision will slow down innovation. The independent agencies affected by the court's decision include the Federal Trade Commission, which works to protect consumers from practices like deceptive advertising or those harmful to competition, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which oversees interstate power lines, natural gas operations, and regional power grid operators, the Surface Transportation Board, which regulates railroad rates, and the National Labor Relations Board, which resolves disputes between employees and employers. Commissioners leading the agencies, traditionally a mix of Republicans and Democrats, are appointed by the president. In 1935, the Supreme Court ruled that the president could not fire the regulators over political or policy differences. That held until last year when Mr. Trump dismissed Democratic commissioners at agencies including the Federal Trade Commission, National Labor Relations Board, and the Surface Transportation Board. Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, a fired FTC member, took her case to the Supreme Court, saying that she had been wrongfully terminated. The court ruled against her last week. A spokesman for the FTC, Joe Simonson, said the agency offered clarity for the business community that was under assault by the previous administration's left-wing ideologues. He added, "There is nothing novel about President Trump's position as the rightful leader of the executive branch," which the court affirmed. Some regulatory experts and corporate advisors said it was unclear how much, if at all, the ruling might shift the agency's political agendas. Even when independent, most regulators adhered to the White House policies, they said. The notion that Slaughter is a big deal because it gives the president more composed power over the policy agenda is exaggerated, said Joseph Grundfest, who was a commissioner at the Securities and Exchange Commission in the 1980s and is now a law and business professor at Stanford. But the agencies have traditionally ignored politics when taking legal action, he said. The White House could now assert greater control over decisions like whether to sue a company over insider trading. Companies are trying to plan ahead, said Matthew L. Schwartz, the chairman of the law firm Boise Schiller Flexner. They're doing what smart people and smart companies do, which is solicit input from a lot of knowledgeable people about what might be coming around the corner so they can try and do some contingency planning, said Mr. Schwartz, who has represented companies including the fantasy sports app DraftKings and the insurer AIG. The president's new ability to remove decision makers at federal agencies could lead to big changes in crucial sectors of the economy. Two freight rail companies, Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern, last year proposed a merger that would create the nation's first single network connecting the East and West Coasts, a deal that requires approval by the Surface Transportation Board. Last year, Mr. Trump fired Robert E. Primus, a board member who had voted against another big rail merger in 2023. When Mr. Primus's removal, Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern may have a better chance of getting the board to approve their merger, some rail analysts have said. A spokeswoman for the board declined to comment. Some consumer advocacy groups are concerned about the potential impact of a partisan Federal Energy Regulatory Commission on energy prices. FERC has really been through Republican and Democratic administrations and really worked hard to be nonpartisan, said Tyson Solcombe, the director of the energy program at Public Citizen, a consumer advocacy group. What the Supreme Court has done is toss that aside. The ruling also has implications for companies with business before the NLRB, which includes adjudicating labor practice cases and recognizing new unions. If the agency loses or even appears to lose its political independence or seems beholden to the president, unions and companies will be less trusting of its rulings, labor experts said. State labor agencies may try to step in to fill the void, which could create a patchwork of conflicting rules. Companies have already scrambled over the past year and a half to curry favor with the Trump administration. Mr. Trump's new power to fire regulators who don't align with him may accelerate that, corporate experts said. Many companies have already sought out connections with Mr. Trump's inner circle or made donations to his inauguration, his library, or other pet projects, said Jill Zuckman, a partner at SKDK, a public affairs firm. It's going to supercharge what a lot of companies have been doing, said Ms. Zuckman, who represents tech and transportation companies and worked for the Obama administration. Europe's new entry-exit system is a mess, and it's not going away. EU leaders rebuffed a plea from the aviation industry to pause the biometric checkpoints, which have caused long lines and missed flights. Summer travelers, beware. European leaders are standing firm on a security program that has led to long lines, confusion, and missed flights at airports this summer, despite an urgent plea from the aviation industry to suspend it. The Entry-Exit System, or EES, requires members of the 29-country Schengen open border area to collect biometrics like face photos and fingerprints from travelers upon arrival and to confirm their identities upon exit. Since the system took full effect in April, airports and airlines have reported widespread chaos, including hours-long security checkpoint lines and confusion over procedures, and have feared the headaches could worsen as peak travel season begins. The problems led senior officials from the European aviation industry last week to ask the European Union to suspend the EES requirement this summer. The system is undermining Europe's reputation, European tourism, and connectivity, said the open letter to the President of the European Commission. But on Tuesday, European Commission leaders officially rejected the request in a meeting with industry stakeholders, saying that the new system's security advantages outweighed its inconveniences. The system makes EU citizens more secure while keeping the impact for legitimate non-EU travelers to a minimum, a European Commission spokesperson said in a statement after the meeting, noting that the system had already registered 110 million trips and refused 45,000 visitors. EES applies in the 29-country Schengen area, which includes 25 European Union members as well as Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. Anyone who isn't a national of a country using the system or a citizen of Ireland or Cyprus is required to pass through its checkpoints. Since the system began to roll out across Europe in October, travelers have encountered an inconsistent set of procedures, taking away from a few minutes to several hours. Some airports have self-service kiosks where travelers can register their biometrics. At others, border control officers manually register travelers. Only 2 countries, Sweden and Portugal, currently allow travelers to use a dedicated app. EES is intended to be an automated system eventually. At present, the system is failing to deliver one of its core objectives, facilitating efficient border crossings, while maintaining the smooth functioning of Europe's transport network. The aviation officials wrote in the open letter urging the European Union to act. Under the current rules, the EES can be only partly suspended, allowing airports to bypass biometrics collection for 6 hours at a time, though they must still register traveler information, a European Commission spokesperson said. The ability to relax the rules isn't enough to make a real dent in the delays. The aviation industry officials said they have unsuccessfully sought greater flexibility to pause the system and revert to standard passport stamping until there is increased border control staffing and consistency for how passengers are registered. A survey conducted among 85 airports in 20 member states by Airports Council International, whose European Director General is one of the signatories of the open letter, found that at peak times in June, passengers could spend up to 5 hours waiting at the airport to enter a country, and though the system is supposed to store traveler data, for 3 years some visitors said that they had been repeatedly asked to submit their biometrics, causing delays. Some people have posted on social media to say that all the problems have them reconsidering travel to Europe. The warnings that the system is not prepared for peak summer travel season are echoing across the aviation industry. Ryanair, Europe's largest low-cost carrier, flagged several airports experiencing major disruptions in an alert to passengers, advising them to arrive early. The list included Tenerife South in the Canary Islands, Palma on Majorca, Alicante and Malaga, Spain, Milan Bergamo in Italy, Krakow in Poland, and Paris Bovie. Summer travelers are being forced to endure needless passport control chaos, Neil McMahon, Ryanair's chief operations officer, said in a statement. Passengers and families should not be used as guinea pigs for a half-baked passport control system that risks creating long queues, missed flights, and unnecessary stress at airports this summer, he added. In Rome, the airports have already been suspending biometrics collection on a near-daily basis this summer, said a spokesman for Aeroporti di Roma, which operates the city's airports. Rome Fiumicino, Italy's busiest airport, expects around 11 million passengers in June and July, which could be up to 180,000 passengers on peak days, the spokesman said. Bath & Body Works is on a quest for another billion-dollar scent. Japanese Cherry Blossom has brought in $1.5 billion over the last 20 years. Can the company's close-knit network of suppliers come up with the next big thing and improve sales? In a brightly lit Manhattan office above a fragrance laboratory, Mary Testa Gao brought a white strip of paper to her nose and inhaled. Two perfumers' assistants awaited her verdict, as if the fate of a multi-billion-dollar olefactory empire depended on it. Smoky, Miss Testa Gao said. Mossy, woody, but it feels unfinished. As the chief nose for Bath & Body Works, Miss Testa Gao is in charge of finding the next Japanese Cherry Blossom. That single scent has generated more than $1.5 billion in sales over the last 20 years, filling millions of homes with the aroma of Asian pear, white jasmine, and basmati rice. The fragrance, which emanates from candles, air fresheners, lotions, and body mists, has been a bestseller since it debuted in 2006. It's so popular that the retailer celebrated its 20th anniversary with an ad campaign and new packaging this past spring as part of a broader expansion strategy to help bring in new customers. Sales at Bath & Body Works have slipped to $7.3 billion last year from a pandemic-era peak of $7.8 billion pushed down by competitors' marketing on TikTok and consumers increasingly suspicious of chemicals and fragrances. To fight back, the chief executive, Daniel Heath, unveiled a plan in November that included marketing iconic fragrances online as standalone brands and offering products on Amazon. Bath & Body Works will also begin selling some of its products at hundreds of Ulta Beauty stores this month. They're coming out with new products. Miss Testa Gao has high hopes for Watermelon Whirl and Tangerine Twirl, which are among the scents being released this week in a new product line promoted by actress and singer Hilary Duff. Nobody knows for sure why some scents become classics while others fall into the discount bin. Despite all the money spent on marketing and focus group testing, some scents still fall flat, while others invoke such intense loyalty that customers rant on social media when they can't find them in a store. That's why the company has invested millions of dollars in being able to quickly manufacture and distribute more candles, lotions, air fresheners, and body mists when customers fall in love with a particular scent. In 2011, for instance, Bath & Body Works stopped buying plastic bottles from China and began sourcing from Axiom Packaging, a plastics container manufacturer that built a factory near the Bath & Body Works headquarters in New Albany, Ohio. KDC/ONE, the contract manufacturer that mixes fragrances into foaming soaps, lotions, and gels, also built a plant there, helping to cut the time to market for some products 2 weeks from months. It was a massive unlock to be more responsive to what the customers are buying in the store, said Nicholas Whitley, KDC/ONE's chief executive. The birth of Beauty Park. Since 2008, Bath & Body Works has consolidated its number of strategic suppliers to about 50 from hundreds. It offered a long-term contract to vendors who agreed to build factories in New Albany, creating an industry cluster that is known as Beauty Park. 50% of our whole supply chain come from China. In 2008, recalled Toby Thunberg, who handled supply chain logistics for Bath & Body Works at the time and now works for Axiom, the bottle maker. Today, 85% of the supply chain for Bath & Body Works hails from North America, according to Susanna Zhu, Chief Procurement and Supply Chain Executive at Bath & Body Works. Of that, 55% is in Beauty Park. Beauty Park was the brainchild of the retail mogul Les Wexner, founder of L Brands, which owned Bath & Body Works, Victoria's Secret, and Abercrombie & Fitch. Mr. Wexner said in 2007 that the global supply chain for the fragrance business was too cumbersome, according to Mr. Thunberg. At the time, the company searched for inexpensive plastic bottles from China. They had to be ordered months in advance, making it impossible to quickly restock best-selling scents, he said. Inspired by an apparel hub in India where Victoria's Secret suppliers turned around underwear orders quickly because they were all clustered in the same area, Mr. Wexner envisioned factories surrounding the company's headquarters in New Albany, where he owned vast tracts of land. It was a radical pitch. The proposed site was a pig farm 17 miles from the nearest railway, leaving his own staff and vendors deeply skeptical. Mr. Wexner flew his team and key suppliers to India to witness the hyper-efficient ecosystem firsthand, Mr. Thunberg recalled. Today, the tightly integrated hub allows Bath & Body Works and its core suppliers to work together more closely, shrinking lead times to weeks from months. During the pandemic, the company was able to quickly pivot to making hand sanitizer and experience its best year on record. Today, Bath & Body Works and its core suppliers have an almost familial relationship, even though the companies also make products for other customers. They are an extension of ourselves, said Stephen Smith, a supply chain senior executive at Bath & Body Works. Those informal bonds make it easier to create new products together, according to Alan Malter, associate professor at the University of Illinois Chicago, who has studied the impact of industry clusters on innovation. If you are just going to have a contract manufacturer in the cheapest place you can find, you will probably be innovating less with them, he said. It will be more of a relationship where you are giving them instruction and say, make this. It is less of a partnership. One afternoon this spring, Ms. Zhu popped into Aileen Candles, a key supplier in Beauty Park that pioneered the 3-wick candle with Bath & Body Works. She chatted briefly with technicians in the burn lab who measure the soot content and height of flame from candles in every batch. Then she stopped by the laboratory at KDC/1 and thanked the technicians who helped develop a daily moisturizing hand soap that had been flying off the shelves. She wanted to know if they were working on anything new. How a fragrance is born. The search for a new iconic fragrance begins in New York, where master perfumers at major fragrance houses like DSM, Fiermensch compete to get on the shelves at Bath & Body Works by crafting new aromas based on themes that she brings them. They create dozens, if not hundreds, of different scents inspired by ideas like Mother's Day or the joy of spring. They fine-tune them based on feedback from Miss Testagao, the nose. Later in the process, focus groups are paid to smell them as well. In the past, fragrances were made by boiling spices for hours or pressing oils out of flower petals. Today, the process is often more high-tech. For instance, to create the Milk Bar birthday cake collection, molecules were collected from the steam of a freshly baked cake at the popular New York bakery chain, then analyzed and recreated in a lab. With the Japanese cherry blossom, whose real petals hardly have a scent, the fragrance was more of a perfumer's fantasy. Harry Fremont, a master perfumer at DSM Fiermensch, who is best known for creating Calvin Klein CK1, designed a cherry blossom-inspired scent in 2006 for Bath & Body Works. Camille McDonald, the creative force behind Bath & Body Works at the time, asked him to make it more complex, so it would appeal not just to mall-loving teenage girls, but also their mothers. She said, I want to make something different, which is to elevate the brand, to make it more sophisticated, said Mr. Fremont, who is now retired. She said, I want to make our Shalimar, a reference to the famous perfume created by Jacques Guerlain in 1925. Mr. Fremont added sandalwood, musk, and molecules that smell like basmati rice when it cooks. Maybe it's a bit too sophisticated, Miss McDonald told him after a round of focus group tests. He added back top notes of apple and pear, and it became the company's top-selling fragrance of all time. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Late night calls a foul on Trump. After his World Cup intervention, President Trump may not have known what a red card in soccer is, Ronnie Chang said, but you know what he did know? How to get a guy a pardon. The land of the Karen. After a red card foul during the World Cup, the soccer star Florian Balogun was handed an automatic one-match suspension, ruling him out of the U.S. team's game against Belgium on Monday until President Trump intervened, after which FIFA suspended the ban. This is America, bitch, the land of the Karen, Ronnie Chang said on The Daily Show. And when life hands us lemons, we call life's manager and say, take these lemons back and let Balogun play. This man didn't know what a red card is, but you know what he did know? How to get a guy a pardon. And if you're thinking this is corrupt, well, yeah, it is, because that's America's style of play. You think we're going to obey soccer rules? We don't even listen to the Geneva Convention. Ronnie Chang, what a twist. Last week, Trump was at the Supreme Court trying to end everyone's birthright citizenship. This week, he personally intervened to protect one specific birthright citizen, previously known as a citizen. The punchiest punchlines, 4-1 edition. 4-1, Balogun, get the Out of my country, all right? This is the worst thing a person pardoned by Trump has ever done, Ronnie Chang, referring to the final score of the U.S.-Belgium match. 4-1. For those Americans watching at home, you don't understand soccer. 4-1 is a humiliating score, okay? The Belgians took the red card we canceled and shoved it up our goalpost, Ronnie Chang. Yeah, we got beat 4-1 by those freaky little waffle munchers, and while this may be a huge loss for the U.S. team, it's a big win for your girl, Tiffany. Yes, no one's easier to snag than a pro athlete with a low self-esteem. Tiffany Haddish, the guest host on Jimmy Kimmel Live. The bit's worth watching. Greg Gutland dove into the allegations against Maine's Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate, Graham Plattner, on Tuesday's Gutfield. What we're excited about on Wednesday night, Lil Rel Howery will sit down with his friend and Haunted Heist co-star Tiffany Haddish on Wednesday's Jimmy Kimmel Live. And along in the works musical about Dolly Parton, Dolly, a true original musical, will begin performances on Broadway in December. A third of young adults still live with their parents. The share of those under age 35 and waking up in their childhood bedroom has returned to pandemic times. In some parts of the world, living at home with parents into your 30s is common, but in the United States it often comes with embarrassment or shame. Nevertheless, a third of adults under age 35 are living with their parents, according to a recent report by Realtor.com. In 2020, the share of young adults living with their parents peaked at about 34%, the disruption of the pandemic largely to blame. By 2022, it dropped back down to between 31 and 32%, roughly where it had hovered since 2012. The lull did not last, and by 2025, 33% of young adults were living back at home, nearly matching the pandemic-era level. The data is not surprising. Renting or buying feels increasingly unattainable for many. A grim job market, inflation, and lagging wages and public benefits can make moving out of a childhood home daunting. Yet most young adults living at home are working, and a growing percentage are college educated. The employment rate for this demographic has remained relatively stable, said Hannah Jones, the senior economist at Realtor.com, who wrote the report. But the share of adults living at home has still increased. This suggests the trend is more about housing affordability and supply than about jobs. Even if moving back home wasn't the plan, some young adults are leaning into its advantages. After a close friend died, Evan Walsh, age 30, moved back in with parents earlier this spring. Spending time with my family has been so healing for me during this process of loss and transition. And because I've been able to do that, I'm finally in a place where I'm able to focus on my career without having to worry about money as much. His mother, Wendy Walsh, age 61, did not expect her son to return, but saw the bright side. I worked so much when he was little, so it's been nice to spend more time together, she said. Also making the best of her situation is Francesca Gullo, age 28, who grew up in Brooklyn and moved out at 17. After 10 years on her own in New York, she decided to move back in with her parents, who had relocated to Tennessee, and go back to school. I was working 2 jobs and I still could not keep up financially. I realized that I did not want to wake up at 35 and have no money saved, said Miss Gullo. It is a very sucky feeling to know that I may never be able to afford to live where I grew up, but I'm grateful that I have this option and that my parents are supportive. And while a lot of parents welcome their children back, some also believe there has to be a good enough reason for their return. If something tragic happens, of course you're going to open your doors, said Miss Walsh. But if you're just living at home at 35 because it's expensive, I personally don't find that acceptable. The high-alcohol drink taking over Gen Z, Buzzballs, a brand of premixed cocktails and colorful orbs, are all the rage. Experts worry they are a magnet for underage drinkers. Buzzballs are hard drinks sold in bottles that resemble phosphorescent billiard balls. They contain around 15% alcohol by volume, more than double that of the average beer. And Lucy Roca first heard about them from her 13-year-old daughter. It was December, and Miss Roca was talking to her daughter and a friend about a shopping list for New Year's Eve party when the girls brought up Buzzballs. I was like, whoa, no way. Miss Roca, 50, recalled. She asked where her daughter had gotten the idea. All my friends are drinking them, she responded. The exchange alarmed Miss Roca, who lives in Sheffield, England, and runs a sobriety group for women. On her next trip to the supermarket, she tracked down a display of the beverages, which cost around $4 a piece and come in flavors like strawberry Rita and peach balls, a vodka cocktail the color of a traffic cone. Miss Roca had flashbacks to drinking similar sweet-flavored beverages like Castaway, a wine cooler, when she began binge drinking as an adolescent. She stopped drinking in 2011. Her daughter's generation seems to have found its equivalent. Buzzballs have been around since 2009, but today they are practically ubiquitous. You can find them sprinkled like confetti throughout college parties and stacked by the checkout at convenience stores. The fluorescent orbs are easy to spot on a Florida beach during spring break in a crowded social media feed. They glow like beacons. The drinks are portable, flavored, and cheap, a combination that has earned them a reputation as a go-to beverage for Gen Z. Buzzballs were the number 2 prepared cocktail brand in terms of dollar growth during a 4-week period ending in January, according to Nielsen IQ. The brand was acquired by the spirits company Sarzac in 2024, the same year Forbes estimated its annual revenue to be somewhere around $500 million. Andrew Pentland, a manager and buyer at Gator Beverage, a liquor store in Gainesville, Florida, said he had noticed a surge in sales of Buzzballs in the past 2 years, along with other strong ready-to-drink beverages like Beatbox and Cutwater. I hear a lot with the younger drinkers that 4.5% and 100 calories kind of seems like a waste, he said, referring to other drinks like hard seltzer. Buzzballs are seen as having more bang for your buck by college students, whom Mr. Pentland says he is always careful to card. There's definitely people that come in underage, and this is the kind of thing they would come in trying to buy, he said. Sarzac says that it is careful not to market to people below the legal drinking age and that the company takes steps to prevent Buzzballs from getting into too young hands, but as the brand has grown, so have the frustrations of watchdog groups that argue that the drinks are intentionally positioned to appeal to minors. To Pam Pierce, the executive director of Community Living Above, an Oregon nonprofit dedicated to preventing youth substance abuse, Buzzball follow a similar playbook for drawing in young people with toy-like packaging, making the product more closely resemble an energy drink than an alcoholic beverage. It's a poster child for what a new drinker would like, she said, and now they're everywhere. The Dry Generation, hold my Buzzball. Buzzballs are the brainchild of Marilee Kick, a former high school teacher in Texas. As she tells it, she was sipping a cocktail and grading papers by a pool when she first envisioned a drink in ball-shaped plastic packaging. She was inspired by a spherical votive candle holder she kept nearby. I thought it would be really cool to make a round party ball type of beverage, she said in an interview. The idea, initially called Party Balls, became her thesis project for her master's degree in business administration. The Buzzballs sold in liquor stores contain spirits like vodka and rum, while Buzzballs chillers available in gas stations and convenience stores contain a base of wine made from oranges or agave. That allows them to be sold in establishments with wine licenses rather than more restrictive liquor licenses. Victor Lopez, age 24, who lives in San Diego, is a fan of flavors berry, cherry, limeade, and grapes gone wild. The drinks are tasty and easy to get down, and they lend themselves well to social media stunts, he added. He has posted several TikTok videos in which he chugs 3 Buzzballs in a row. Buzzball has leaned into a more rambunctious identity than your typical hard beverage brand. It auctioned off a Buzzball-inspired diamond engagement ring and sold basketballs designed to be filled with drinks called Big Blue Buzzballs. In 2024, Buzzballs announced partnerships with the athletic programs at Louisiana State University and Texas Tech University to offer its drinks in stadiums. The marketing, I would say, is really good, Ms. Einman said, adding because they are constantly bringing out new flavors, it's constantly topical. You have bright colors in sugary drink that's high alcohol content and is easily concealable container, said Jonathan Noel. Buzzball sends free beverages to some people older than 21 who post about the brand, but said it has not encouraged the videos about drink mixing. At least some fans of the beverages have chosen to cut back. Mr. Lopez, a 24-year-old in San Diego, still enjoys a Buzzball from time to time. I just want to make better choices, he said. You've been listening to a reading of the articles and features from the July 8th issue of New York Times. Your reader has been Claudia, and I thank you for listening.